Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
At Qtr Time Pod, we are big advocates of being open when talking about periods. And so we're really pleased to say that our friends at Modibody have collaborated with Puma to launch a new range of active period underwear to keep you free from leaks, sweat and discharge when you work out, no matter the time of the month.
This active period underwear collection comes in 3 styles and a range of sizes, absorbencies and 2 colorways. If you're passionate about the planet, then you'll be pleased to know they are made from 82% recycled material.
As sponsors of the podcast, Modibody are delighted to offer our listeners an exclusive 15% discount on the collection at modibody.com if you use the code QTR Modibody. You can find all the T's and C's and the code in the podcast notes.
Go check it out. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Qtr Time podcast. So, Luce, what's coming up on the show today?
So, as always, we'll run you through our 3-word summaries of round 18 of the Netball Super League and reveal our game of the round and player of the round. Our special topic today is the female athletes, and this is part 2, featuring Dr. Emma Ross from the Well HQ and England Rose Fran Williams. We're going to be diving into injuries, nutrition, Red-S, breast health, as well as the menopause. We're also going to hear about Fran's perspective as an elite athlete and discuss girls' participation in sport. So I'd really recommend tuning into part 1 with Nat Butler as well beforehand if you haven't already. They're 2 really fascinating episodes.
Yeah, I'm really excited we've done this as a topic, actually. It's so fascinating. And I've been diving into the Well HQ's new book, which has just been released as well, which we'll be probably mentioning. But yeah, really good stuff. So before we dive into our summaries, we've had a number of retirement announcements this week. Over in New Zealand, Bailey Mez and Claire Kirsten have announced their retirements from domestic and international netball. And closer to home, Sasha Corbin has announced this will be her last season in the Netball Super League. And finally, Juva Mentor, the GOAT, she has announced that she will retire from international duties after the Netball World Cup, which will incidentally be her 6th Netball World Cup appearance. Isn't that amazing?
Absolutely phenomenal. Like, I know. Go. Yeah. GOAT status achieved.
She's been to more Netball World Cups than I've had hot dinners, probably, is what my nan would say.
Yeah, honestly, an outrageous career. Like, what a woman, what a legacy as well. And don't forget, this is Jade Clark's 6th World Cup as well, and she's still going strong. Lord knows how many more caps she's going to get as well. So yeah. And finally, as well, don't forget the South Africa Netball World Cup squad has been announced. Big shout out to Devan Botha, who got in touch on Instagram requesting a special South Africa bonus episode on the squad. We would absolutely love to, but we just don't have any more hours in the day, unfortunately, to be able to squeeze this in. So we thought we'd just do a quick comment on it now for you. I mean, my thoughts, I don't know about you, Luce, but I think quite hard luck for Siggy Berger. Like, she's had really great season, shooting really high volume and high accuracy as well. But there's just so many talented shooters in that squad, and it's so hard to get back in there. A star commission for me is Monique Mayer, which I was a little bit surprised at. Like, I don't think she's necessarily had the best season, or maybe not as much court time as she was expecting, and that possibly was a factor within it. I am so unbelievably stoked for Lefebvre Rademan, who's come back from an ACL injury, or who tore her ACL 10 months ago, and also really excited to see some of the lesser known names hit the court. But I think like people talk about South Africa being a real threat, but if you actually look at their starting 7, like, it is no joke. So my starting 7, right? Potgieter, Rademan, Msomi, Chawani, Van der Merwe, Pretorius, Mawani. Like, I'm sorry, that is a fire team. And then you got the likes of Nicola Smith, you got Elmarie Vanderberg, is that Grizzle on the bench? Like, they could really be a massive threat.
I think anyone who's not taking South Africa seriously is going to trip up, because I mean, Norma Plummer at the helm, and I think what they've got it not only this year in terms of the home advantage being, the first World Cup to be held in South Africa, is also those names on the bench. I don't think they've really had that before, that power to bring change off of the bench and make an impact. Really excited to see how they go. It will be, though, how well they can get together as a team and gel, because they do have people here, there and everywhere, and not necessarily those established combinations in all areas of the court. Obviously, Pretorius and Mawene have played together consistently, but Qtr and Rademan, that's a fairly new combination that they're going to need to try and settle in.
Yeah, and actually they haven't stated which of the 15 are the travelling reserves. So actually, for all we know, Rademan on the comeback from that injury might be a travelling reserve. Like, exactly. We're not sure. So yeah, a few bits to figure out there, but wow, they are an exciting team.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to our summaries from the Netball Super League round 18. First up, we had Thunder versus Stars on Friday, and that was 74-51 in favour of Thunder. And I said Stars caught napping.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredibly slow start for Stars, who saw themselves down by 20 goals at half-time. Yikes. Thunder had an absolute field day in this game with an outrageous 103 feeds. Almost half of those came from Amy Carter, possibly buoyed by her Netball World Cup travelling reserve selection.
Mm-hmm.
Stars were pretty scrappy in this game, 18 unforced errors and 4 cautions, quite clearly missing the steady head and leadership of Gabby Marshall in the middle.
Yeah.
Great to see Nat Metcalf get a spell in goal attack in this game, especially after the news of the Roses only taking 3 kind of out-and-out shooters to the Netball World Cup.
Yes, very good indeed. Following this was Dragons versus Pulse, with Pulse coming away confidently 71-53. And I've gone for Pulse take charge. This is the third time this season that Pulse has scored 70 plus. And although 2 quarters were close, Pulse only won them by 2 goals. The margin of 18 was actually 3 more than it was when these two sides met in round 8. So they've actually just put their foot down even more. This was one of the most clinical performances all season from Dragons. They only had 5 unforced errors and 6 missed shots, which is, I would say, an improvement from them, which is great. This game as well also saw Zara Everett pick up the GD bib in Fumi's absence, who's out with a short-term injury. Thank goodness it's short-term for you. And boy, did Zara own it. She had 5 intercepts to her name and was an absolute powerhouse.
Yeah, it's all right for Pulse, isn't it? When they could just put Zara Everett. Right? I'll just put Zara Everett on, no worries. Next up, it was Storm versus Lightning, and Lightning took a big win, 64-46. And I said, Storm falling flat.
Yeah.
I actually really thought this would be a game of the round before the round started, but it was a little bit of a disappointing game, actually. Mm-hmm. I was hoping and perhaps expecting a much closer scoreline. Maybe not sort of 1 or 2 goals, but definitely within 10, as it was obviously 2 top 4 sides against each other. But Storm really, really struggled against just a clinical and ferocious Lightning side. They've just played how we've seen them play all season. Besides Amy Flanagan, the Storm defence could not get any ball whatsoever, which is really unusual of them. I think they could perhaps benefit from mixing their lineup up a bit and just having Flanagan in centre, kind of starting in centre, and then Kawanga in wing defence, maybe just to help them a bit in that respect. And Storm don't have any more games now until the semi-final. So it'll be interesting to see whether that's going to be a help or a hindrance to them.
Yeah.
I think, in all honesty, it probably doesn't matter, especially if they're looking like they're going to be playing Pulse or Lightning. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I can't see them doing it. So game on Saturday then was Rhinos versus Bath, with Rhinos taking a narrow win, 59-55. And I've gone for a wild ride. This game was an absolute roller coaster. And I honestly thought that Rhinos were dead and buried by half time, because Bath had an 11-goal lead, for goodness sake. But my goodness, talk about never say die. I'm not sure if Rhinos stood up or if Bath kind of collapsed, or probably a bit of both, to be honest. But Rhinos clawed it back and then even extended a lead and obviously took the win. This for me is a bit of a concern for Bath, and I really have to question the choice of substitutions, particularly. I thought Betsy Creek was doing a good job against one of the best keepers in the league, and it all seemed to just go downhill a little bit when she came off. It felt like, for me anyway, there was a lot of whistle in this game, and like the umpires even had to speak to the captains, which I don't think from memory we've had so far this season.
No, I can't think of any occasions.
No, we definitely had some last season, but it got to a point, particularly in the second half, where it actually just felt a little bit uncomfortable. Even though it was a spectacular comeback, I was just watching it a bit like, oh,
yeah, it is a bit uncomfortable when things like that happen. And also you just worry about injuries and, you know, you just don't want someone to go down really. But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. But I mean, fair play to Rhinos. I have to say that is an amazing turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
Last game then on Monday, it was Mavericks versus Bath, and Bath took the win 57-54. And I said, first away win. This one really could have gone either way, and it did kind of flip-flop throughout the game. And although I was disappointed for Mavs, I did feel that Bath worked their little socks off in this game, and they really deserved the win. Mavs had 10 unforced errors to Bath's 4 in the first half, and just really struggled to find that consistency. Ina Marie Venter still out with injury, and she has been for a number of weeks now. And Mavs have now got 2 pretty tough matches to finish off the season. They've got Thunder followed by Pulse.
Yeah.
But credit to Bath in this one. It wasn't pretty at times, but a first win on the road in the season is something to be celebrated, and they're definitely making steps in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that takes us on really nicely to our game of the round, which was this game, Mavs versus Bath. And for me, like, this was one of the most consistent performances that we'd seen from Bath. And I was expecting them to lose their heads a little bit in the final quarter particularly, but they really held strong. So absolutely props to them. You mentioned about the unforced errors from Mavs. There was a whopping 18 by the end of the game, with 7 of those belonging to Britt Clark, who wasn't as safe with her hands as we usually see from her. It's quite unusual, maybe feeling the pressure a little bit, I don't know. A great shift put in from Kira Rothwell, who in the second half in particular had one of her best games of the season. In the first quarter, I found that she'd often get caught behind the defender's body, particularly like if Britt was on a hold and then Kira was sort of stuck behind, there was no movement. She wasn't doing that classic goal attack drive in, but in the second half, she really stepped it up. She did some of those sweeps around the circle and it really worked. She put up 23 from 25 at 92%, which is both great accuracy and volume from a goal attack. So well done to her. As you mentioned, really sad for Mavs not to get the win, mostly for Sasha Corbin. She didn't have her fairy tale finish for her last home game of the season, but what an incredible ambassador she's been for our sport. We have to take a moment to acknowledge and recognise her and her contribution. Always giving 110%, bringing the vibes, and definitely one of the most dynamic players I've ever had the privilege to watch. So congrats to her on a stellar career. And for Bath, finally, this, I think, was definitely the best game we've seen from Creek and Wilshire this season. Both put in terrific performances. Creek shot 32 from 33 at 97%. Her movement was fantastic. She got Quash's head spinning. So, yeah, it was a really good game.
Yeah, and actually you mentioned Creek there. I mean, some of those falling out of court moments were just so good. And she's really grown. I think she's absolutely solid for Bath down there. And yeah, they've kind of worked out how to work that attacking end with her, I think, a bit more. And when Kadeen came on, though, it was a little bit sticky to start with, but then actually they found quite a nice rhythm between them in that attacking end. So yeah, really good signs for Bath. I was impressed. And still on the theme of Bath, we can't get away from them this week. Our player of the round was Jada Pekova.
Yeah.
She was outstanding with 2 very difficult games, both being away from home, which is really difficult, especially as a defender, because, you know, you really live from that crowd and that noise, and it's difficult when it's just silent if you get an intercept. In the Rhinos game, she had the best stats on court, even better than Vicky Osola. 6 turnovers in total, 1 rebound, 4 intercepts, and 2 deflections, one of which resulted in a turnover. It's just her elevation and the speed of her footwork to get around the body, which is so incredible. And despite Bath not having done particularly well this year, I do think she's really grown and developed. I mean, we haven't seen Summer Artman in weeks. And that's just credit to the work of Jada getting out there and owning that goalkeeper bib.
100%. And I think when you think about her in terms of England prospects as well, you've got maybe Jazz Brown in goalkeeper, who's got potentially the height that Jada's missing. You've then got Jada in goal defence, maybe Fumi out in wing defence, where I used to really love her a couple of seasons ago. Like there's a lot of talent there.
Yeah. And in the youngsters as well, and they're all so young. And actually in the Mavs game, she equaled Kwashi in terms of turnovers. So she's really up there with the best in our league. She had a much cleaner game in that one with just 10 penalties compared to 18 in the Rhinos game. But I mean, she's 19 years old and 5'9". So some of her performances this season have just absolutely blown your mind. She's number 4 in the league for intercepts and turnovers and 6th for deflections. And in my view, she's just a star on the rise, and I can't wait to see how she grows.
I could not agree with you more.
Coming up after the break, we hear from Fran Williams and Dr. Emma Ross from the Well HQ for the Female Athlete Part 2. I don't know about you, Luce, but it gets to this point in the season and all I'm thinking about is getting new trainers. When you're just eyeing them up all the way through, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I love a bit of new stash, but I'm the type of person, I'll put all of these things into my basket, spend hours and hours looking around, but then I'll never actually go through with it. It just sits in my basket forevermore.
It's so true. I know, honestly, can relate. But luckily, Lovell Netball are offering a 15% discount on all first-time orders with code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk. So you're sorted.
Yeah, and honestly, Lovell Netball is the place to go. Whatever you want, they've got absolutely everything.
Everything. Such a good range. Yeah.
So whether you're looking for trainers, you're looking for bibs, you're looking for supports, whatever you need.
Sports bras, all of that stuff.
Sports bras, exactly. They have got you covered. So don't forget, that's a 15% discount off all first-time orders with the code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk.
Love a bit of Lovell. Oh my God.
Love a bit of Lovell.
Love a bit of Lovell. Happy shopping, guys.
We are delighted to welcome onto the pod Dr. Emma Ross from the Well HQ and England Rose defending superstar. It's Fran Williams. How are you both doing?
Hello.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely our pleasure. I'm so excited for this. We've been waiting a few weeks now to do our part 2 of the female athlete, and who better to have on than you guys? You are absolutely leading the charge in this space along with England Netball and the Netball Her programme, which we'll talk about quite a lot. So really is a pleasure to have you both on. So as I mentioned, today's episode is the Female Athlete Part 2. So for any listeners who haven't caught up with Part 1 yet, featuring Nat Butler, do check it out. It was absolutely brilliant. So before we dive into some of our questions, Emma, coming to you, can you tell us a little bit about your background and the partnership between the Well HQ and England Netball?
Yeah, absolutely. So a potted history. I spent the first kind of 10 years of my career as an academic. So I worked in research and teaching in sports and exercise science. And then in 2012, I moved to be the head of physiology at the English Institute of Sport. So that meant I was in charge of sports scientists who were working across Olympic and Paralympic sport, probably at the most exciting time in this country, just after the London Olympics. It was fantastic. And in that work, I started to ask questions about how we supported our female athletes, and specifically whether we were actually treating them as females as well as brilliant athletes. And that led to a number of years working with coaches and athletes and sports scientists to really start to understand the female athlete and see it as a massive opportunity. It's not often in sport you find something that has been so unexplored and is so understood and allows so much opportunity for improvement of athlete health and performance and well-being. And then in 2020, I stepped out of that role, having done it for about 10 years, to set up the Well HQ, because I knew that there was a much broader reach outside of Olympic and Paralympic sport for this type of thing, for education and support around female athlete and female athlete health. And so with my co-founders, Baz and Bella, who are also women's health specialists, we started the Well. And one of the first, I guess, NGBs who put up their hand and said, let's have a discussion was England Netball. And from that day on, we've really just had some really brilliant conversations that turned into amazing initiatives like Netball Her, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's how I got here.
Amazing. I completely agree. It is actually astounding how unexplored this whole topic is in, even 2023. Like it really does blow my mind. And Fran, you're obviously an ambassador for the Netball Her programme. And we know that the Well HQ are working with the Roses on a number of female health issues. So from your perspective as a female athlete, how important is this kind of support to improve performance at the elite level?
Yeah, I think it's so important. But, I don't want to stand here and kind of say that, oh, it's so important, I've known this for ages, because I think touching on what, Emma's just mentioned there is that actually only getting involved in this initiative with England Netball and kind of becoming a bit of a Netball Her rep and a bit more of an ambassador in this space, I've kind of started to discover the importance of it myself. And, I'm 25 now and been in the programme actually for a long time. And it's kind of the first time that I'm actually having these conversations and thinking about, for me as an athlete, what these things mean for me and how I've just kind of gone through the motions with some of the things that have happened to my body just naturally by being a female and also by being a netballer and someone that's very active from a young age. So yeah, I guess it's kind of been quite a nice process to chat with Emma and also be a part of learning about what the Netball Her initiative can do, because I think I'm kind of learning as I go as well, which is the exciting thing about it, but also shows the need for it. Because, if I'm one of the elite players at the age of 25 and I'm kind of still not really sure what it can always mean for me, then that definitely shows that there's the demand for something like this within our sport.
Yeah, 100%. And just to dig into that a little bit deeper, obviously you've gone through the England pathway. You are one of our outstanding defenders going to the World Cup this year. And when you're progressing through that pathway and the underage groups and now being the ambassador to Netball Her, is there anything that you've learnt now, having gone through all of that, about your body that you wish you'd known when you started your elite journey?
Yeah, I think understanding that everybody's kind of bodies are different would be one of the first things. And also that your body's not going to act normal all the time. So just because, you start your period at this age and then you had a regular period for the first year and then you stop having that, or you decide you need to explore contraception and then that changes things with your body. I think these are all different things that happen and you go through in the decisions that you're making at the time that maybe you're not fully conscious of the effects that it's having on your body, or why it's important to consider certain options and making sure that we're getting support with that. I think that they're probably the key things that when I look back and reflect on, I just kind of did and I had support with, but was I really consciously checking what effects all this would have on my body? I think, just more it's the awareness of it and the confidence to have those conversations. Definitely the information, I remember joining the pathway I was 15. I probably had only just started my period like within a year. Fitting in the right sports bra, my boobs will have grown along a lot over those years. All those kind of things I think are just stuff that I would experience from joining the pathway. But also what's great about the Netball Her initiative is that's just not exclusive to me as an elite player. Like they're things that everyone will experience who play netball. So actually that's what connects us as women. We're all going through these kind of similar changes at those times in our life. And just because I'm an elite netballer, it doesn't mean I'm experiencing it any differently to necessarily someone who just plays once a week for fun with their friends.
Yeah, 100%. And actually it is about girls and women's participation in sport as a whole. And actually participation in sport is partly a female health issue. I firmly believe that. And we know that 64% of girls will have left sport by the time they finish puberty, which not only means that local netball clubs miss out on a huge number of potential members, which then stops our sport from growing as quickly, but more importantly, those who don't feel able to continue playing sport won't receive the enormous benefits that come from being involved in sport, both mental and physical. So Emma, what kind of tangible action do you think that we can take as the netball family to encourage girls who are going through puberty to stay in sport?
I mean, it's a brilliant question because I think it's a really critical issue, and the data from England Netball reflect it in your sport, but it's absolutely widespread that lots of girls, by the time they finish school, they will not do sport again. And like you said, we know that the best sort of predictor of health and happiness across our lives into our old age is being fit and moving our bodies. And if we can do that in a fun way that's also social, like through netball, then, you know, all the better. So I think for me, part of this is about education. I think in schools at the moment, and it's easy to point the finger at schools because they're sort of under-resourced and very busy, but in schools, the content that's delivered to girls about their bodies is quite mechanical. It's, you have ovaries, you have fallopian tubes, you have a uterus, this is why you'll have a period, this is what sex is, don't get pregnant. And it's quite kind of mechanical. And actually, what we know is it's how you experience your body that's almost the most important thing. And so when we're talking about periods, it's not just about describing why they happen, but actually how hormones of the menstrual cycle might make you feel, how they might influence how your body changes shape, for example, and then how that might make you feel in that new body, about how to manage periods, not just, here's a tampon and here's a pad, but, you've got to run around, you've got to move your body, you've got to feel comfortable. What are some of the challenges going to be? And then what could we do about them? And your breasts are going to develop. How can you stop those being an issue? We know that lots of girls, about 75%, say their breasts become an issue through puberty when they're doing sport. Either they're embarrassing, they move, they hurt, they don't know how to get the right sports bra. So it's talking to the girls, educating them, giving them the information that they need to feel more comfortable in their body and probably more capable of saying, okay, I can, this sport is still for me. Like, I can still move around and enjoy my body, even though it's changing. And actually kind of putting your arm around girls through puberty and saying, this is also just a phase. Like, starting your periods is tricky. Breasts developing, bodies changing is tricky. It's no good me jumping in and saying it's so positive, you should love your body. It feels weird. It feels tricky. It feels horrible, a bit gross, frightening, all of those things. And I think sort of metaphorically putting our arm around girls at that time and saying, how can I help you? Having, as Fran said, open discussions that feel completely normal and not embarrassing and not like, it's very, this is a very secret thing we're talking about. So opening up conversations and giving girls really positive, good information about their bodies, and them knowing that by the time they get to 20, they will be slightly more comfortable with all these changes, and in that quite sort of vulnerable, emotional and physical time of change, that it's okay for it all to feel a bit weird.
Yeah, that education piece is really crucial. And I remember when I started my first period, it was the first week, I think, of year 7. So I'd had that whole transition from primary school to secondary school. I'd like shot up faster than everyone else. So I was the tallest girl in my year. And, that had to happen in my first week. And my mum, bless her, when I told her, she handed me this enormous thick, it was like an inch thick. It was horrendous sanitary towel. And I was like, what on earth am I meant to do with this? Like, I had no idea. So that education piece is absolutely crucial. And, we know that your book, The Female Body Bible, was released earlier this month, and we're going to link to it in the show notes for anyone who wants to buy it. It's absolutely fantastic. And there's a brilliant section on injuries, which I think links to this education piece really well. And we know that it's a huge issue in netball, but there's this whole, an absence really of data and understanding around female health and specifically injuries. But the studies that we do have shown that women are up to 8 times more likely to suffer an ACL injury than men. And although there's lots of theories about why this may be, there's still a fair bit of work to be done to get some concrete answers in this area. And I think this has come to the fore in women's sport more broadly this recently, partly because of the Women's Super League in football. Arsenal alone this season have had 4 ACL tears, I believe, and upwards of 25 footballers in top women's competitions around the world have torn their ACLs in the last 12 months in football. So absolutely wild numbers. And currently only 6% of sports science research is dedicated specifically to females. And this is what you refer to as the gender data gap. So Emma, why on earth is women's health so under-researched and under-invested in?
Yeah, brilliant question, and really brilliant to raise something like the ACL injury risk, because like many topics in women's sports, some of it is about making sure we're comfortable, confident, happy women now to be able to move our bodies. Some of it is about the rest of our lives. So if you get an ACL injury, you know, your risk of re-injury is about 30%, your risk of osteoarthritis is about 50%. Within 10 years, like you're affecting women's journeys through life, and as we said before, their ability to play sport and enjoy sport. There is a lack of research into women for a number of reasons. One is because we have a different physiology to men, and in research what we want to do is try and control everything, so we really get the answers, you know, kind of to the questions we're asking, and not have loads of noise from other factors. So you try and get groups that look and feel kind of generally the same. And so groups of men are quite useful in that, because they have a daily hormonal rhythm and they kind of all look, you know, fairly similar. Whereas actually, if you get a group of women, if they're at different times of their menstrual cycle, their physiology and their hormonal levels will be very different to each other, let alone for that one individual, different across a month. And that's been used as kind of an excuse, I think, because it makes researching women slightly more time consuming and slightly more expensive in some cases. That should not be an excuse. It should not be that we default to men at the exclusion of trying to understand women's bodies just because we're not willing to put a bit more time and effort in. We don't do that with any other research. We don't say, oh, cancer's really complicated, probably just give that a swerve. You know, we go, wow, we're going to really pile the resource here because we know it's very important. So it's not a good enough excuse, but that's one of the reasons why. And I think, you know, when we think about research, we have to think about research needs money, and money comes from somewhere. And the funding bodies have to be responsible by saying, we are ring fencing a certain amount of money to close this gender data gap, because otherwise there's no incentive for anyone to get out of the lane of just default researching a male body in whatever area they are, like sports, medicines, health, etc. So there's a few things that have to happen. There is some really brilliant sports science research going on in females, and I think more needs to happen to get that 6% up. I mean, how shocking is that? Mm-hmm. But also, we also need some really good translation of information from the research into, you know, Fran's world, where she's on the court and she's being coached and she's being supported by a physio. Because the trouble where there's not very much knowledge is that there is this risk of false information or sort of a slight mistranslation of research into practice. And we see that a lot in women's health, partly because in women, you know, science has been used to prey on the insecurities of women for a long time. You know, you only have to look at the beauty product industry to know that. So what we don't want to happen is that sort of urban myths come about. So, for example, we mentioned injury. There is thought to be a relationship between the hormones of the menstrual cycle and injury risk. But absolutely, we don't know enough at the moment to say that there is a time of your cycle where, oh gosh, you should really be careful. At the moment, we just know that there is some influence, just like there is influence of hydration in injury or fatigue in injury. So, but we don't know enough. And I, you know, did a big project in football last year where there are players who are really worried. You know, they go, oh, I've got my period. I'm so worried I'm going to get injured because I've heard this is a thing. And actually, fear of injury is a risk factor for injury. So we have to be careful, like translating the research into the real world as well. So there's still, as you can imagine, quite a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Just gonna follow on from Emma's point there around the urban myth stuff. And I really feel that in like reality amongst the team as well sometimes. And you don't want people to latch on to concepts of, oh, was she on her period when she did the ACL? Or, you know, oh, I've heard that actually being on the pill can help with ligaments that mean that you're less likely to tear your ACL. And I think it's a really scary place to get to when there's not thorough research or that real understanding behind some of these theories that are just kind of flown about in that space, to kind of evoke unnecessary fear and make people worry about things that aren't necessarily true and also aren't sturdy and also are probably very small insignificance compared to the other things that we can do to control our bodies and get them in the best place to play netball. So I know, for example, thinking about what contraception I'm on and where I'm on in my cycle would be the smallest part of what could control the potential for injury compared to actually, have I eaten well before playing my game? Have I gone to sleep and got 8 hours before playing my game? Am I well hydrated? All of those other factors are going to fully outweigh any of these small minor 0.005% or whatever they're going to be on research that's maybe not thoroughly there yet, and that's just the situation that we're in. So I think it's really important for us to kind of potentially get excited about research that could really support and kind of bolster some information for us for what could support our bodies and injury risk. So I definitely don't think that that's a reason to not fully more delve into this space around research and injury risk in our bodies. But it's definitely not something that we should be latching onto now as players. And I think it's really important that, off the back of a lot of these kind of big profile cases of injuries, that it doesn't kind of create a bit of a scaremongering amongst us as elite players. And there's still so much out there that we can be doing, in the gym, etc., that will fully outweigh any of these smaller factors at the moment, I think.
There's been a brilliant programme developed by England Netball called Jump High Land Strong, and that is in response to the fact that women are more likely to suffer joint injury. And there, like we said, there's a number of factors. One really huge factor is how well we move and how well conditioned our whole body is and how balanced that conditioning is. So we haven't got one muscle group that's kind of taking over from another. And that we have really good agility and really good balance and really good coordination. And so England Netball have kind of said, okay, if that's a really big win, let's try and get everyone doing things each time they train. And it can be, 10 minutes before you actually get into your training, that you're doing these conditioning exercises. And the Jump High Land Strong program really gives you great coaching and coaching cues to deliver that. And there's research to show that if you do that, you can reduce ACL injury risk by 45% and overall injury risk by 27%. So even in that alone, which might be 2 or 3 times a week, delivering really good quality movement training and conditioning. And it's things like lunges and single leg work and squats and sideward and acceleration, deceleration, but done really well, not done in chaos, just done really well. So your brain is kind of really teaching your body how to move well. You can really, really reduce the risk of injury. So those sorts of things, as Fran said, are huge wins, because you can do them in a netball specific way, and you can integrate them into your sport and your coaching, whether your pathways or your performance, and you start to really make an impact on making sure we all stay in one piece.
That is so valuable, and I hadn't even heard of that program, so that's fantastic for our listeners to be able to hear. And in terms of a research perspective, it'd be remiss of me not to mention the research that Manchester Thunder are currently doing with Manchester Met University Institute of Sport. It's a co-funded project that are studying the effects of hormones on performance injury and recovery, and it will focus on the link between hormones and the ACL injuries in women. So absolutely props to them for also helping to lead the charge in that respect around research specifically for ACLs in netball. But another topic that's come up a few times in this conversation already is around sports bras. And as well as having an impact on how confident you feel playing the sport, having the right sports bra can also have a huge impact on your performance. Now, in the Female Body Bible, which we highly recommend everyone buys, it states, by wearing a well-fitting sports bra, you may be able to achieve a 4% improvement in performance. So, Fran, we often talk in netball about those little 1%ers and, in elite sport more broadly, and particularly when the margins at international netball are so small and it's so highly competitive. How much of a difference does wearing a well-fitted sports bra make for you?
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And I think it's kind of, as you said, in the top level of the game, it is the 1% margins that you want to make a difference for. But that's not just exclusive to the elite players. The margin actually might be way greater if you're playing at grassroots level, the impact of actually wearing a well-fitting sports bra, because you don't want that to be something that causes body image issues, or people are in pain playing, for example. And I think it kind of just goes back to that cliche saying of like, look good, feel good, and like if you're comfortable in what you're playing, then that's just one less thing you have to think about. On a netball court, you're thinking about, oh gosh, where should I be? Where's my player? Who's free to pass to? Am I in the right space? I need to catch the ball. There's so many different elements on. The last thing you want to be thinking about is, 1, the way you look, 2, how's it feeling? And you don't want your boobs to be a distraction while you're playing. There's too much on in the game to think about that. So I think it's just about being able to take that element out. That's not a consideration while you're playing, and you can just focus on I guess the game in front of you. So that's the importance of it.
And we are seeing great progress in this space. Like 7 Stars this year had a sponsorship with Marie, a specialist sports bra brand. Eleanor Cardwell's done some amazing Instagram videos reviewing different types of sports bras, which is absolutely fantastic. And according to Marie, who Stars have partnered with, 8 out of 10 women are wearing the wrong size sports bra. And I also think there's sometimes a misconception for people in the itty bitty titty club like me, where you have small boobs, that you perhaps don't need to wear a sports bra. But Emma, can you talk us through the different types of sports bras available and why it's still important to wear one if you are below a sort of DC cup?
Yeah, I love the name of your club.
Itty bitty club.
Sports bras are fascinating because, as Fran said, not only, every woman will know how it feels to, perhaps you're putting something out the front of your house on a Saturday morning, you want to go to run in, you haven't quite got dressed yet, and you're thinking, oh gosh, you can't run without a bra. This is a serious situation. And breast movement, impacts all of our body's movement. And so, because actually our breast tissue is just, unfortunately, as unlovely as it sounds, just fatty lumps stuck on the front of our body. They have a functional use if we choose to breastfeed children, but otherwise they're just fatty blobs. And they have, a mass, and that mass is moving when we're moving, and it's only held on by skin. So actually it can move a lot because our skin is elastic. And even if you only have an A or a B cup, that's still a mass that is moving on the front of your body, even if it doesn't feel particularly, heavy. And that will affect how your body moves. So anyone will know that if you're trying to run and you've got a handbag slung over your shoulder, even if it's a small bag, it's joggling around and, your body's probably adjusting to compensate. And that's what happens. And that's why breast support is so important for not just comfort and pain, but for performance, because all of the sort of consequent impacts that happen in our body as our breast tissue moves, our stride length shortens, which for netball, when you're covering several kilometers on a court per game, that's important. If you're trying to make an interception, having a shorter stride length is not going to help you. Our body posture changes, so we use more energy during exercise. Even the perception of effort, so how hard we would rate exercise, gets higher the lower our breast support becomes. And that carries across all breast sizes. So yes, all of the effects are amplified once you get to a D cup and above. So more women with larger breasts will have breast pain, more will have discomfort as they exercise if their breasts aren't well supported, and the impact, the stride length, the body position, the exercise effort will all be greater in bigger breasted women, but they still affect right down to an A cup. So there are 3 types of sports bra that offer different levels of support and style, I guess. So you've got the compression sports bra, which is a classic kind of crop top design. So it's designed to compress or squish your breast tissue against your body and hold it in place. And that is fine for smaller breasted women, A to C cups, because what you do by squishing the breast tissue down is you make it into one boob, really. If you've got larger breasts, you do not want to make those 2 things into one force to be reckoned with. So a better bra for D cup or even C cup and above is an encapsulation bra, which people will recognize as a sports bra that's got more fastening. So it's not the over the head type. It's got perhaps an underband fastening, adjustable straps, and it provides support to each breast individually. It's kind of like scaffolding around each breast. And the fabric is more rigid, so it has got less stretch. So it really does hold breast in place. And the third type of sports bra kind of combines both qualities. So it will have encapsulation, so it will hold each breast in place. And then it might have a layer of compression as sort of an extra layer of security. And the best thing is to find what works for you, your breast size, your body shape, how comfortable you feel. But if you're a D cup and above, a crop top isn't going to hack it. And then it's also, my last tip on sports bras is you have to find the right fit. Fit is the thing. So it's no good saying, well, I'm usually a 34D, so I'm going to get this 34D and then I'm just going to pop it on, because as with anything, when you go into different shops and buy tops, that, one shop you can be a large and in the other shop you can be a small, and you think, how have I got a wardrobe full of different size clothing? The different brands, the different designs, different fabrics, the different styles will all come up in different sizes, even though the label says the same number. So it's about finding the right fit. And on our website, on netballher.co.uk, there are some great guides to the 5-point fit. So the things you have to consider and check to make sure your bra fits really well.
I mean, I'm a 32-year-old woman and I had no idea about the different types of sports bras. Like, how wild is this? That people just don't know, like even myself. So absolutely go and check out the website. Go and check out Eleanor Cardwell's Instagram as well. She's done reviews of different brands. So absolutely everyone get on that and check it out.
Yeah, I was going to say on the Eleanor Cardwell thing, I'm learning so much through her. And
right
there touched on the you don't want to compress if you've got larger breasts than both together and create what Eleanor refers to as mono boob in her reviews. So I get fascinated by them. I'm watching her videos. They're so interesting to watch. And yeah, I'm loving her terminology, the things that she's kind of lived and experienced through her bra journey.
Yeah, mono boob is not the one. They're really fantastic videos. Now, another huge area for discussion, which we haven't talked about yet, and I don't think gets talked about very often, particularly relevant to young female athletes, but can affect people of all ages and genders, is around nutrition and fueling your body for performance. Now, there's some studies of high-level female athletes that have suggested that up to 50% demonstrate one or more disordered eating behaviours. And I think pressure to look a certain way can also result with athletes ending up in an energy deficit. And the extreme cases of this is called RED-S, which stands for Relative Energy Deficiency Syndrome. So, Emma, a lot of people won't know about this. Can you explain a bit more about why this happens and what can be done to prevent it from escalating? Because it's really serious.
It is. And when we talk about female health, people kind of understand periods and menstrual cycles and breasts because those things happen exclusively in a female body. But there are also some things that just happen differently in a female body than they do in a man's body. And that's why they're still female health issues, because, again, we don't understand them well enough in the context of being female. And we've already talked about injury as one of those, and nutrition absolutely is another. And before we get into the kind of the science behind fueling, which is so important, it's really important to recognise that our relationship with food as women is different from men. And everyone will resonate with this without me telling you there's research behind it, but the research shows we attach guilt to lots more types of food and food groups. We are much more likely to restrict or diet, in inverted commas. We're much more likely to want to control what we eat to maintain a given body shape or size. And that's a societal influence about this kind of stereotyped ideal of what a woman's body should look like. And so whenever we're giving nutrition advice or wherever we're talking to girls about nutrition, we have to remember it is not just about knowing what to do. With nutrition specifically, knowing what to do is never enough, because it's actually the behavior, that what your brain is telling you about food and your relationship with your body and food that's really behind it. So I think when we're working with girls particularly, 13 to 17 is the peak presentation of eating disorders. And mostly that's going to be coming up in girls. We have to remember all of the things that are influencing our decisions about what to eat. But specifically when we're athletes and when we're active, whether we're in school doing loads of sport and enjoying our netball, or whether you're at Fran's end training every day, the interesting thing about the female body is that if it doesn't get enough energy, so that means you're not eating enough food, or you're not eating enough food at the right time. So, Fran gets up and goes training without breakfast. Her body is going to be like, I don't have enough energy. And you're expending more. And then if Fran doesn't have a snack after training, she's depleted all her energy and her body's like, I really need more energy. And when your body is constantly going, oh gosh, I haven't got enough energy, it tries to conserve energy. And so in a female body, the brain is there going, God, how can I save energy, because I'm constantly not getting enough and I'm expending all this energy. What can I shut down? And it can't shut your brain down, because even though your brain uses loads of energy, you need it to survive. And it can't shut down your neuromuscular system or your immune function, because you need all those things to survive. but it can shut down your reproductive system, because actually on a day-to-day basis, you don't need that to stay alive. You don't then have to produce hormones. You don't have to have periods. It saves your body loads of energy not to run that system. And it might, on the surface, seem actually fine. Like, oh, I'll stop having periods. I won't have those hormonal fluctuations. Amazing. But the thing we have to celebrate about our female hormones is that they are not just about allowing us to be pregnant. They are so important for our growth, our development, and our health. So our bones only grow strong because estrogen arrives and helps them to do that. Our breasts stay healthy because of the balance of estrogen and progesterone in our body. Our brain stays healthy because progesterone is neuroprotective. Estrogen is amazing for our immune function. So because you're not fueling well enough, you've shut down these hormones, all of those systems in the body start to dysfunction. And for athletes, that might then look like underperforming and not realizing why you can't deliver in training what you used to be able to deliver. It might look like a stress fracture because your bones are getting weaker because estrogen's not helping them gain strength. It might look like recurrent illness because your immune function is being compromised. 70% of girls who are underfueling will suffer from low mood or even depression because the brain isn't working properly. And that's relative energy deficiency. That's you get into a state where you haven't got enough energy. Your body has decided to do something about it by shutting down really important hormonal cycles. And that means there's widespread consequences across your whole body. Now, that sounds really significant, and it is, because some athletes, if they don't recognize that anything's wrong, if that carries on, we've had athletes who have developed osteoporosis in their early 20s. And that's very, very significant. The good news is that if you restore your energy balance, you can start to, and it takes a little while, but you can start to repair all of those things that have been impacted. So it's about supporting girls to know the value of food. And I'd be really keen to hear from Fran about how we can get athletes to feel like food is their superpower, because it really is, in terms of training, performance and recovery, and not have these emotional sort of attachments to eating and food that can negatively impact their body.
I mean, Fran, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I just think education is like the key to all of that, in terms of, you there touching on, when you've got morning training, people kind of think, they wake up, the last thing they want to do is kind of sometimes eat first thing in the morning. But actually understanding we do so much to better our performance in netball, and we make all these sacrifices and we train so hard and we do all the extra little bits in the gym and the extra recovery. And then if you're not getting the nutrition right, we don't understand how much that could be restricting our performance. So I think particularly at the elite end, kind of understanding that this could make you a better netballer, because we're all there jumping at anything that can make us better players, because that's why we are where we are. So, understanding that this is to enhance your performance will only, I think, strive people on to kind of learn more about it and take more care over it, because it's another way of untapping potential new gains that you can make with the way you can play the game. So I think that's key, and kind of understanding, as you said, that actually the body needs that energy to function. And I think there's this kind of concept that almost less is better for just losing weight. And it's not that, if that's what the goal would be for girls, or if people think that they're needing to kind of cut, that the way to do that is to just fully restrict eating at all. And that's just not the case. I think just education in that space is the biggest thing.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think people don't understand actually how prevalent eating disorders are within society. Within the UK, it's estimated that between 1.25 and 3.4 million people are affected by an eating disorder, approximately 75% of whom are female. So this is something that is massive, and I think netball has a part to play in that education piece and in making sure that everyone is able to live happy, healthy lives. And I think another topic to me, there's so much that we could talk about here. It's absolutely fascinating. But another thing in terms of different life stages, we've talked about periods, we've talked about grassroots participation, but the older life stages around menopause and perimenopause, it's something that will eventually happen to all of us women. But what I've learned through various conversations with friends in older life stages is that the physical effects of it have hit them like a ton of bricks. They were completely ignorant as to what was about to come their way. But one of the best ways of managing menopausal symptoms is to move. And that's why programs like Walking Netball are so crucial and ideal for this. Yet just under a third of women stop being active during menopause, even though the desire to be active is quite high. So, Emma, coming back to you, why is movement an absolute non-negotiable for women in this life stage?
Yeah, it's a bit like puberty, because exercise is so important, and it's almost the last thing that you feel like doing when your body is changing. It feels slightly alien. But the one thing you have on your side with puberty is youth, and the one thing you don't have on your side with menopause is youth. And actually, that's what's underpinning here, is that as we age, our muscles and our bones are just getting weaker. And that happens to everyone, men and women. Per decade, we're losing about 8% of muscle mass. We're losing bone density. And that's just the sad thing about aging. Our body slowly, gets slightly less functional. But you can stop that decline with exercise. But then as women go through menopause, we were just talking about the importance of those amazing hormones of the menstrual cycle. Unfortunately, we stop producing those. So, menopause is defined as a year after your last period, when you're probably in your early 50s, but it can vary. And that means your reproductive cycle has stopped. Now, in the years leading up to that, there is loads of hormonal changes happening, and you can have really high highs levels of your hormone, and then really big crashes of your hormone. It's kind of like your cycle is just kind of winding down and is a bit confused and chaotic. And that's what can often cause the physical and emotional symptoms in your 40s. But overall, those levels of hormones are declining, and then they're stopping. And if we appreciate how important those hormones are for building muscle strength, for building bone strength, for keeping your cardiovascular system working properly, your immune function, if we lose their influence, one of the best things we can do in their place is do exercise, because exercise ticks all of those boxes. It works on muscle function. It works on bone strength. It works on brain health. It works on immune function. It works on cardiovascular health. So you can almost try and replace what you're losing from losing those hormones with the benefits of exercise. And also exercise has been linked to reducing the symptoms that you might experience during perimenopause. So it's so vital. And netball's an amazing sport for this, because what we want is impact, because we want the bones to stay strong and the muscles to stay strong, and all the jumping and landing and twisting and turning you do in netball is great. What we want is something that challenges our brain. So that skill element of netball is fantastic. And we also want to try and include some load bearing. So if you can incorporate kind of some strength work as a complement to your netball, that's really, really brilliant. And we want to include pelvic floor work, because the pelvic floor doesn't do so well during menopause. And we don't want something like stress incontinence to be a big barrier for women as they try and do exercise. So exercise is really vital. But women going through perimenopause and menopause, their body shape will change. They might put on weight around their tummy. They might feel very, very tired. They might have joint aches. They might have hot flushes, all the things that, don't make you want to exercise. But actually, if we can build in these habits, healthy habits, and that's why, again, netball is so brilliant, because if we can add the social and the fun element into it, it's something that will always drag us back. And because exercise is in those 40s, 50s and beyond, absolutely vital for our long-term health.
Yeah, 100%. For me, it is the physical and the mental benefits that combine together through something like sport, and particularly team sport. I think that it is absolutely crucial. A key consideration in the discussion around menopause is the differences in experiences between white women and women of colour. And I think this is something that isn't talked about enough for me personally. According to the study of women's health across the nation, an American study, decades long, examining the health of midlife women across ethnicities in America, Black and Latino women enter menopause earlier and have longer lasting, more intense symptoms. Hispanic women are more likely to report feeling bothered by vaginal dryness, urine leakage, and an increased heart rate. whereas Black women frequently cite hot flashes and night sweats as some of their most common symptoms. Black women are also 3 times more likely to experience premature menopause, so menopause before the age of 40, than white women. And I genuinely had absolutely no idea about any of this until researching for this episode of the pod. And for me personally, a lot of the time, conversations I have around menopause, I feel are viewed through like a white woman's lens, and it can be a little bit non-inclusive in that sense. So when it comes to participation in sport and being a predominantly female sport, how important is it for us to acknowledge these differences that women have across different ethnicities and different life stages to ensure that all women feel that they can belong in our sport?
I think it's such an important discussion to have because, like you said, women's health in general, women's health and well-being, and as an industry, has been very white woman centric. And as you said, the experiences of people who don't fall into that category are different. And if they're different and they're not being acknowledged and researched and educated around, then this is not an inclusive discussion. As soon as you have any intersections with women's health, such as race or such as socioeconomic status, we start to know less, understand less, but also the discussion around it becomes much less. So I think we've always said that Netball Her is an amazing opportunity to use netball as a vehicle to help women understand their bodies. And I absolutely think that Netball Her and netball is an amazing opportunity to be inclusive in that discussion, because when you look at your sport, you have women of all different shapes, sizes, colours, from all different corners of, this country, joining together in a community and in a netball family. And it provides an amazing opportunity to be able to have a discussion with everyone about their experience of puberty or the menopause. And actually those stats that you've mentioned about Black women and them having earlier menopause, the same happens in puberty. So often Black girls will go through puberty more earlier. And for them, for example, it has a knock-on effect to, let's say, where they might be put on the court. Because they're developing quicker, they might be kind of pigeonholed into a specific position. Because they might develop into really brilliant athletic, muscular athletes, they might be pigeonholed into a position that actually limits them from experiencing different positions and developing skills in those positions for the rest of their life. And the same with, if we just look at menopause through this lens of white women, we are not acknowledging that the span of experiences and the uniqueness of everyone's experience needs to be acknowledged and supported. And so we can't say this is what's normal, when actually normal for example, people of different races isn't, the same. So we have to absolutely open up the discussion to be really inclusive. The research, we mentioned the 6% earlier, is terrible when it comes to intersection of women's health with many other factors. So we need to be better at that. And for me, it's about listening. So it's about listening to everyone's experiences and learning for yourself, but also because everyone's experience is so different. So my experience of my pregnancy or my postnatal journey or menopause will be different from someone else's. And as a community, to create a space where we all feel safe sharing that, for it not to be weird to come and talk about your menopause or talk about your postnatal experience, for it not to be judged, for it to be supported. I think that's what Netball Her gives us the opportunity to do. It's kind of like, come here and be a woman and bring what it means to you to be a woman and share it with us. And I think that's how we can encourage this whole space to be more inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And so finally, we often speak around the uniqueness of being female as a really negative thing. Like even on this podcast, we've gone, oh, well, you got this to look forward to in menopause and injuries and all of this kind of stuff. But actually, I think there are a number of positives that are associated with being a female athlete. Like for me, I think the resilience that women, just as a broad group, have to be able to cope with all of these different elements and still put out world-class performances. Like we are an absolutely incredible group. And I think community as well, that the way that we can all sort of rally together as a group of women to support one another with things like Netball Her. Like, those are some of the positives for me around being uniquely female in sport. So Fran, what are some of the positives for you? It's not all doom and gloom, is it?
Oh, 100% not. And I'm really conscious that I want us to be celebrating, you know, our bodies and how powerful they are, and how they allow us to, you know, play this sport and compete at the high level, and the intensity that I can play at and the strength that I can play with is all down to my physical body and the way that I can train it, and my mental resilience to keep training it. And everyone has that who wants to play sport or stay active. And I think, you know, something we've not touched on, childbirth. Like, I've had peers and teammates and, you know, friends in teams I've played with who have had children and, you know, come back to playing and are playing at this level and are beating me in training every single day and things like that. Lauren Nichols, Stead as we call her in our team, you know, she is an amazing athlete playing at the top of the game, you know, so good week in, week out at training, come game days. And, you know, she's got little Maya as well. And I think that's just an example of where we see it in our sport, how powerful our bodies are and what we can celebrate. And, you know, the mother she is, we celebrate her. We celebrate Mary, who's now got Jackson over as well in our Lightning squad. Sophia Kandapa, who I played with for many years at Wasps, one of my best friends. She's had 2 little ones and she's come back. So I think, that's an area where we can really celebrate the power of our bodies. And I guess, it's just that camaraderie around it. And the more we have the conversation, the more we're open with each other, the more we talk about these issues, the more I kind of think we kind of come together as one big group, and it's like we're all in it together. And I think that's the really powerful element of all of this.
Yeah, 100%. Emma, your thoughts on that?
I mean, absolutely echo Fran. Our bodies are amazing. And the only reason we have to sort of frame some of this stuff as like, oh gosh, you know, the menopausal periods, is because we have had so long without really great education and really great information about it. And this is the time to kind of, you know, spin the PR on some of this stuff, because we've talked in this podcast about how amazing our hormones are. And actually, when we don't have them, the consequences, our bodies are incredible, and we need to remember that and actually celebrate all parts of them. If we get the right sports bra, our breasts don't need to hold us back. The only reason they are is because no one's taught us well enough. So once we've got that information, you know, we can be really empowered to be in control of our bodies. And I think that connection piece is so important. There's some brilliant research that shows that women deal with stress through a tend and befriend approach. So rather than just having a fight or flight response to stress and threat, women are, again, our hormones and our physiology and our neurochemistry set us up to really appreciate connection and befriending and building social networks to cope with stress and pressure. And how brilliant that's exactly what team sports does. It gives you that network. So whatever's going on in your life, you can lean into that network of people and use those relationships and connections to really help you navigate them. So we have lots to celebrate about being women and being women in sport.
Wow, how extraordinary. Well, thank you both so much for your time. I appreciate you're incredibly busy women. So really big thank you for coming on the pod today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was such a fascinating conversation. I genuinely find this whole area so interesting, because it is so under-researched and just not talked about. And there's all these myths and rumors and things going around. And I think it's so important to have these conversations and get it all out in the open to really enable women to know what they need to do to be their best selves in their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, the thing with me, I'm sort of torn in two here. I come away from the conversation, I'm feeling so invigorated, and I'm like, yes, all this stuff is out there. We've got these great ambassadors, like, we're going to change the world of women's sport. Amazing. And then the other half of me is absolutely raging that we're in 2023 and we're only just getting it. Like, this is only just happening. So I'm sort of balancing those two sides. I'm a bit like the Joker at the moment. So what an amazing conversation.
And better late than never, I have to say.
Exactly. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time. We cannot wait to bring you more netball chat and another super special guest next week. In fact, you guys are actually not ready for the guest that we have next week. so excited.
I know. I cannot wait for this one. It's going to be so good. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Do get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the matches this weekend and which players have stood out for you.
We'd also really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the pod, do let us know and spread the word of your netball pals so that even more people can get involved. Don't forget as well, finally, to take advantage of our exclusive 15% discount with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.